What happens when a company charges taxpayers for work it can't back up? In the case of one Nashville engineering firm involved in city construction projects, a News Channel 5 investigation discovered they just got more of your money. Tonight, our chief investigative reporter, Phil Williams, is taking an in-depth look following the money.
Well, interesting matchup.
March Madness 2018 at Nashville's Bridgestone Arena. Down on the court,
And Cody with the jam.
Texas and Nevada engaged in an old-fashioned shootout.
Coleman with a big three.
Up in the crowd, a Nashville engineering firm was also trying to score. In this case with Metro officials who could steer contracts their way. That company, Collier Engineering. A month later, as the Predators took on the Avalanche in round one of the Stanley Cup playoffs, Collier Engineering was again trying to score with Nashville city officials, invited to enjoy the much-anticipated game in the company's luxury suite.
And what do you see in those photos?
A lack of awareness, a certain hubris.
A cozy relationship?
Correct. Right.
Too cozy?
Too cozy.
Metro Council member Angie Henderson chaired the council's Public Works Committee when those images of Collier whining and dining city employees came to light. City auditors investigated and concluded the allegation that there is an appearance of preferential treatment being given to Collier Engineering in exchange for entertainment and gifts is substantiated.
When there is the perception that we have kind of, cronyism and that there's a preference for certain folks, it's bad for everyone.
Then a second audit, this report released at the beginning of the pandemic, uncovered even more questions about how Collier Engineering billed the city for the work of its employees. Out of just 23 selected invoices, auditors found every single invoice contained some billed hours that could not be tied to timesheets. There was $145,000 in billings where the employees' timesheets didn't match the invoices. The company says the majority of that was for the services of a temp agency. There was also $275,000 billed for the time of top Collier executives who were not required to keep timesheets. Total questionable billings, $421,000.
That might sound like, oh, well, that's not that much. It is. It absolutely is. And that's only on selected invoices. That's not on all the work that they have done. And so it's a red flag.
Collier blames an antiquated record-keeping system, insisting there was no fraud.
I'm not an auditor, and that raises red flags.
Metro Council member Freddie O'Connell is also a former chair of the Public Works Committee.
If they cannot demonstrate that they perform services to the level of the billing, then they owe us money, in my opinion.
After that second audit, an internal review by Metro officials concluded that top Collier executives have billed the city for huge blocks of time that just didn't make sense. Collier disputes that. Still, that did not stop Mayor John Cooper's administration from giving the company new contracts totaling more than $25 million. For one of those contracts for construction and engineering inspections overseeing city projects, Collier almost didn't get the job. Documents show Collier scored 6 out of the 8 firms that bid for the job, and the city appeared to be ready to give contracts to the top 4, shown here in yellow. But at the last minute, the decision was made to give it to the top 6, which meant Collier just made the cut.
Not even to single out Collier, but let's say this is happening across the board. Why is the Metro procurement process this broken?
That despite findings by evaluators that Collier, quote, failed to demonstrate capacity to perform the work.
If you cannot prove that you have the capacity to do the job, should you get the job?
I don't think so.
A finance department spokesperson said in an email that only offering contracts to the top 4, quote, would seem arbitrary, providing offerors with grounds for appeal.
The whole point of this process is to find the person who can do the job the best at the sweet spot of also the lowest cost, right? I mean, that's what we ought to be talking about.
A company gets caught engaging in questionable practices. Not only does nothing happen, but they get more city business.
Right.
Is that the way taxpayers expect the city to behave?
It's not, and rightly so. Process is paramount, but here the process as it is presently is just, it's not kind of meeting the smell test.
Officials from Metro's Public Works and Purchasing departments declined our request for on-camera interviews. But after we began investigating, Metro's law department sent Collier a letter demanding repayment of more than $267,000. As for the engineering firm, its attorney argues that its billings were accurate, that signed timesheets were never required by its contract, and attempting to collect the money now is, quote, absurd. Phil Williams, News Channel 5 investigates.
Phil, thank you. Collier Engineering also says it has improved its record-keeping processes since that audit. We've posted the audits as well as responses from the company at newschannel5.com.